Hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is the 25th of February, the second month of 2025, and this is episode 196. Thank you there, Juan, for posting the agenda. We're almost there. We're almost at the 200 mark, which is absolutely insane to even say. Yes, thank you for reposting. Yeah, great, amazing. Yeah, we're almost at the 200 mark, which is incredible. I cannot believe that we are almost at this significant milestone. I am working on a special episode, some special gifts and prizes. Yes, that is very true. That's going to be yeah. It's exciting. I cannot believe we're this far into IOH. We've been here every single week, almost every single week, bar holidays and stuff, for many years now, which is exciting. Yeah, this is pretty fun. So I want to make sure that episode 200 is a big one. Yes, Jim. So I want to make sure that episode 200 is a fun one. So guys, if you can make it to that one, please do. There's going to be some fun prizes and maybe even some sort of trivia. So get clued up on your graph knowledge, especially some older graph knowledge. Many of you OGs will benefit from knowing what happened back over 11 brownies. You guys. Who knows? Never say never. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to get into today's episode. Welcome back to many of you who are here on a regular basis, and welcome to all of you who are new to Index Office Hours. This is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and discuss relevant and important topics for indexes. You know what I'm going to say next. This is a conversation, and yes, we do love participation. So if you'd like to get involved in today's conversation, please do via voice or chat. Where's the meme? I know, I was kind of relying on you guys to pop out with the meme. So whoever's going to get there first, yeah, I would love to see that. If you'd like to get involved in today's conversation, do so via voice or text. Many of you are using the text functionality in the corner there already. And there you go, Chris. Thank you. We love it. When you first posted that, I was in tears. It was so good. That's a really good one. So yeah, chat box in the corner. If you'd like to get involved via voice, please do let me know, and I will get that sorted for you. If you're having any challenges, today's going to be a Kubernetes discussion, so no doubt going to be an engaging one. So do get involved. As a reminder, this session is going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So of course, if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's exciting agenda. Okay, so shout out for the latest GRT IQ episode pending. And this one, okay, this seems to be a pretty fun part of IOH. Luckily, his name is pretty straightforward, at least his first name. So I'll attempt. That's easy. Yes. Arkit is how I pronounce it. The second, his surname, I think I can try and wait. What? I'm wrong. Wait, Arkit. What? How would you guys pronounce it? I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Eric. Okay, Eric. Jesus Christ. Everyone seems to love to. Okay, Arik. We have consensus. Okay, Arik. Okay. Well, if I failed the first one, his first name, I'm not even going to attempt his surname. So let's leave it there. He is the vice president of technology, at Fireblocks, which many of you already probably know. They run ultra-critical infrastructure that enables companies to secure blockchain-based assets. So yeah, they enable self-custody. It's a pretty interesting piece of technology. He talks about his background growing up in Israel, his passion for technology. He spent 8 years at the IDF, where he went on to work on AI stuff and machine learning after that. And then he talks about leading engineering team at highest score before joining Fireblocks. And of course, he talks about the graph, what he thinks about the future. And so if you're interested in that episode, and also his background, and perhaps maybe a correct pronunciation of his name, then go ahead and check out that episode in the chat. Okay, enough mispronunciations from me. I'm going to hand over to Anna for our regularly scheduled repo word section.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, everyone. Let's see what we have today. So starting with execution layer clients, here we have had a new release from Get. This is 1.15.3. This release provides some critical hot fixes for the deposit contract configuration on Hlaľský and Sepolia testnets, and operators should upgrade to this version before the Sepolia fork to ensure continued functionality of the network. This is a critical configuration fix before upcoming fork. Then we have a new release from Firehose Ethereum. This is release 2.10.0, which includes critical updates for the Prague hard forks that necessitate changes in configuration for the get binary, and also introduces a new block model. So all operators must ensure that their systems are updated to maintain functionality with the new block types and gas changes. Again, this is a critical change before the upcoming hard fork. We also have a Nethermind release this week, 1.31.1, which fixes the deposit contract address for Hlaľský and Sepolia Pectra hard forks and changes the default sync type for Hlaľský from snap sync to full sync. Again, crucial updates for maintaining network stability and should be upgraded as soon as possible. And then this is all I have, and nobody said anything in the chat, so handing over to you, Juan.
Thanks, Anna. And yeah, we said a bunch of things, but mainly, how to pronounce names. Okay, getting into Protocol Watch, we have a few things to cover. As always, for formal governance, we have a bunch of disputes. These are GDR 26, 27, and 28. All of them, if I'm not mistaken, are disputes for the same indexer. And essentially, it's a valid POI was presented, but the status endpoint, I think it's not responding the adequate values. It's not responding POIs. So we waited for a few weeks to see if the indexer would respond and clarify the situation. And given that there's no responses, and it seems that the actual subgraphs weren't synced, and there's no way of validating those POIs, we're waiting a little bit more until the end of the week. And if there's no answers, currently the situation seems that the disputes are going to be accepted. Then we have chain support request, add support for EDEXA. Again, if you're interested in any of the new chains, the link to the thread is in the agenda. For formal research, we don't have any new updates. For the contracts repository, there has been, if I'm not mistaken, an audit on the Horizon contracts, and there have been a bunch of PRs open because of that audit, mainly fixing typos in documentation, a few fixes, I think, for the GraphTally collector, and a few other things for the subgraph service. Nothing major, thankfully, but there have been a few updates to the Horizon codebase. And for the network subgraphs, we don't have any new updates since last IOH. That's pretty much it, and I don't see Pac around, so I'm going to be handing over to Abel now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for both of your sections there. Okay, so we have the good fortune of having a regular today for our open discussion, and he is our local Kubernetes shill, and we have the good fortune of being able to hear all about his new indexing stack, which no doubt is full to the brim with Kubernetes. So without further ado, Vince from Notify, feel free to take the stage and enlighten us with your Kubernetes wisdom.
Thank you, Abel. Looks like Payne's missing, of course. So what I'm going to show you guys today is Argo CD, and it's a stack I've been working on. And just to let you guys know, eventually I will output a skeleton of this, so you guys can play with it and use it and do all that fun stuff. So I'll just get started with sharing. See if can you guys see this?
Just loading for me now. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, let me zoom out here. Okay, so basically what I'm going to walk you guys through is how Argo CD works, and then some of the, I guess, core pieces of Kubernetes I've decided to choose, and for what reason. Just feel free to stop me or give me questions as you see fit. So Argo CD is a declarative management. It's GitOps for Kubernetes. Thank you, Abel, for linking the link. So I guess I'll just start out. This is the UI, so Argo CD does come with a nice little fancy UI for you to kind of see things. But where the real nitty gritty is the repo. And I was going to show in VS Code, but it's a little more easy to present and has a nicer look to it on just the website, GitHub. So I'm going to walk you guys through kind of like what it is, what a template is, and how to use those things. So this is just like a basic setup. So if you have your Kubernetes running and you have nothing else installed on it, you just blanket helm install it. And then what you're going to do is add your repos and then bootstrap this YAML here that I have in here, and it will kind of take over declaratively. So you're kind of running it with just your manual command, and then the repo will take over. There's a lot further you can get into this where it's using what's it called, OAuth and all this other stuff where you don't have to do all this, but this is just for simplicity. So I'll show you kind of a template of what Argo looks like. So this is what launching a Helm chart in Argo CD looks like. So the first thing you have in Argo CD is it lets you, so say you're working in teams, it lets you split things up by projects, and you can determine basically permissions on that project, who's allowed in the project, what repos they're allowed to deploy, what projects, what things they can do, and then you can also, drill down, who's an admin, who's someone that just kind of monitors and looks, and who's someone that doesn't even get to see it exists. So starting from the top, you would add your repo URL, and then your chart version and your chart name. And then what I do, you don't have to do this, you can actually put the values file in this one file if you want, but I like to grab it from the repo that this is in, and grab it from a folder. So what that's doing is this is actually making a reference to, and that's what the ref is for, reference, to this repo, and then it's putting that here, and then it's going to the values of whatever folder I'm in, if that makes sense. So that way you can have a nice clean values file that is separate, so you can freely edit it and kind of get a easier view without all this gobbledygook in between it. And then you kind of tell it where you want to launch. So what cluster are you sending it to? Or are you sending it to the cluster that Argo CD is also installed on, and the namespace you want to send it to? And these are just kind of some sync options. You guys are, just write in Argo CD sync options in Google, and you kind of look up what these things mean. But create namespace is kind of an obvious one. So let me go back here. Here's a play manifest one. So with this, you would have, a folder and then a path to your customization.yaml, and it will launch all that stuff. So same kind of thing, supports Helm, supports customize, regular manifest, whatever you want to do. And then here's an example of, let's say, a project. So this is the indexer project, and I say, oh, you're allowed to launch stuff in Argo CD, graph protocol, and monitoring namespaces, and then you kind of declare, an indexer admin, indexer operator, and a read-only thing. So getting into that, I'll kind of show you. So at the base here, we have a customization, and that's telling when I run the root YAML, it's saying run these things, run these folders. And we'll look that apps is hashed out. That's on purpose right now. But on the infrastructure side, I kind of put stuff out as monitoring, networking, security, storage. So any votes on what subject first, on what tool? Anybody? Storage, monitoring, whatever you want. All right, no votes, cool. Monitoring. Okay, so monitoring, I reports that I stole, and you'll just see it's a normal, dashboard. And the values for it is here. This is kind of, I'm not going to walk through every single value, but this is kind of where Victoria Metrics lives, and Grafana and all that stuff. But I think the exciting thing, I'll just kind of show you a couple pieces that I found rather interesting. So in storage, I'm using a thing called LinStore. And for backups, I'm using a thing called 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗄. So in LinStore, configuring your drives is actually done by it. So you're giving your worker node a completely blank node, nothing on it, no partitions, no nothing. And you're going to feed it these configs, which will make your day a lot easier. So you just tell it, hey, make this ZFS pool. Here are my drives on the host. Here are my drives on the host. And it will set everything up for you. You don't need to touch it. It will set up all your drives, and it will set up all your stuff. Yes, I am Kuberneting everyone again. But what this is really nice for is you don't have to do all that manual work with your drives, and it kind of takes care of everything. And also, it comes with a UI as well, so I'll show you guys that. Nice little UI that you actually get on storage. And I'm looking for a specific page. Yeah. So if you look at a specific one, you can see, how much is used, how much you have, that kind of stuff. You can also set alerts on if LinStore is going haywire. It'll actually also give you logs here and tell you that stuff is going badly for you. So that's kind of cool. And then the other thing is where is it? And then so with 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗄, so what 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗄 is it's basically scheduling the backups for me. So what this is going to do is set a schedule, and then it's going to tell LinStore, hey, send this stuff to a bucket and back it up and then ship it. So this is kind of the values for it. And I'm just declaring my buckets, and I have my secrets. And then I just set a schedule. Hey, every Sunday at midnight, send everything in the Ethereum namespace to my buckets. So you can kind of envision that. You don't really need to do much besides, create your schedules, and it will run those backups of your PVCs into your bucket storage without you really needing to do much. So that's kind of how I've been dealing with snapping stuff. And then bringing it back is a pretty simple command. You just run 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗄 backup restore, and then whatever your snapshot is, and it will bring that back to life. So a lot of manual work got turned into a pretty easy thing with this YAML and 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗄𝗃. And then on Postgres, which I'm sure most of you are more inclined, I'm using Postgres operator. There's nothing really here to see, besides it does also come with a UI. So I'll go ahead and share that real quick. One. Oh, it's HTTP. So this is Postgres operator. It's also in Launchpad charts, but this is also the UI that comes with Postgres operator. So you can kind of see that I can take a look at my backups, and I can see if it'll connect. I forget if I, yeah. So you can see my backups are running, and you can grab the latest snapshot if you want, and you can clone this snapshot, and you can call it a new, whatever you want to call it. Pick your storage class, your users, and let's say you did IOH, and my database is called IOH, and the owner of it is IOH. So it'll give you a nice little template of what your YAML is going to look like. And you can do it in here, but I recommend if you're doing Argo CD, you want to stick with declarative management. So try not to just do things willy-nilly like that. But you can, look into these things and check the status of things, the logs, etc., etc. So you do get that, which is nice. And I suppose jumping from that, I'll go to the indexer repo. So the relevant part for all of you. So this is the whole indexing stack, and it's 2 indexers actually. So what I'm going to show you is another thing in Argo CD called an application set, where you can run as many things as you want and ship them anywhere with a pretty simple YAML. So in my apps here, I'll jump to databases first. But on the experimental indexer, this is the configuration of an entire DB. That's it. But what you can also do, you can tune it right here in the YAML. Hooray! You don't got to mess around with Postgres SQL conf file and all that stuff. You can just shove it in here, and it will pick up all your tuning parameters, and you're done. So that's a whole 20 terabyte database that backs up to buckets. So, but I'll show you what I was actually talking about with these are just the values. So for the values, I'm just running Launchpad. I'm running Launchpad Helm charts. So you guys have all seen those before. It's just values files, nothing special. But if you take a look at indexers, so I'll show you, what is it called? So the indexer. So I have 2 indexers. They're both not running right now. So I'll try to explain this as simply as I can and what an application set is. But same as the one before. But you can set variables here in your elements. So you can see that mainnet and experiment indexer are going to have different variables. So my path is going to be the same, but my values file is going to be different. That's the only thing that's going to be different. And it's going to be called something else, or maybe the version's different because you're testing stuff and you're trying a new graph node release, what have you. But what this does is, so with these variables I've set here, when I deploy this, you can see now that the bottom is now variables instead of declared things. So this basically generates this YAML twice if I had this unchecked, and it's going to fill out all these things with the variables I set here. So the name, when it runs through this one, it's going to fill out name here. When I run it, it's going to use the same repo, but the indexer name and all that stuff, and the values is going to be in a different place. So you can see here, this is going to be mainnet indexer. This has a different name. So basically what it's doing is it's running through, and you can make any of this bottom stuff be a variable with this. So if I wanted to have a destination as a variable, I could very well do that and set a destination up top, call it whatever I want, and I could ship it to multiple clusters if I wanted to. I could ship it to 2 different clusters with the same YAML, or 5 or 6 or whatever you want. So that's, and I wrote a Helm chart. If you guys are interested, I'll post a link after this. I wrote a Helm chart for Vincent's indexer tools. So that's pretty nice because you can actually just Control Shift F and use the UI to allocate, unallocate, all that stuff. So you don't have to manually go into anything to do your allocations and all that stuff. Let me see what else. That's just an ingress, but yeah, this is the whole double indexer stack. Obviously, there'll be more databases for the other one, but that's kind of it for that. So I guess I'll just kind of show you guys what it's kind of like. So in this, I have RPCs, and I have an Ethereum mainnet RPC, and I also have a EVM load balancer. Thank you, Payne, for that. That's a 𝗨𝘀𝗃𝗂𝗟 product. So I'm going to launch both of these. So you can see right now, it doesn't exist. But I guess I should explain how the hierarchy works. So these customizes are in a hierarchy of how they point to things. So you can see at the root level, it's pointing to apps, Argo CD, infrastructure, projects. So if you go into apps, you'll look and see, oh, I have another one. And that goes to RPCs. And then you go into that one, and you have another one. And so I can hash out this one and just launch Ethereum mainnet. And when you hash one out and you sync it, it will turn off the other one. So it kind of works in that tree hierarchy. So you can see all of those were enabled. So if I wanted to enable it, the actual root level one is disabled. So all I have to do is enable apps, and I'll just hit a good old sync. And it will launch the load balancer, Ethereum Aragon, and Ethereum Lighthouse. With Argo, what's cool too, so you can actually drill down all the components of everything, your services, your pod, everything like that. And you can actually go into the pod and you can look at logs. And you can, search the logs. You can download the logs, whatever you want to do. Or if you're, a K9s person, it's here. So you can, look at it. You're done. I think it's lagging. Ruh-roh. Oh, that one. That's why. That one takes longer. But yeah, you can get your logs there too. Whatever you use, K9s, whatever. But that's how you get your logs, and that's how quickly it does that. And same thing, if I wanted to remove it again, I can just do this, commit, and I can refresh that. We'll go into this, get a different view, and it's already deleting them. So it reacts pretty quickly. Normally, it checks on state, I think every 5 to 10 minutes, but if you're impatient and you're working on something, obviously you can just go in and hit the sync button, and it'll happen right away. Any questions so far? I know I'm rambling, I'm trying to shove all this in like 45 minutes.
Yeah, folks, any questions? Feel free to ask now, or as Vince is going through this stuff, ask away, and then I'll just put a question mark behind your question, and then we'll surface that for Vince. It seems like Anna's typing, so perhaps a question is coming. So we'll just wait on that, and yeah, keep them coming.
Okay. Another, I guess, powerful feature I'll tell you guys about is, so Argo CD also comes with a complete REST API and gRPC. So if, let's say, you built some type of front end where you're launching stuff into your cluster, and you're not necessarily maintaining the declarativeness of it, you can actually run curl commands, and those YAMLs I showed you before, you can just run a curl command and it'll deploy it in your cluster. Which is pretty cool. So you can imagine what you can do with an API and a front end. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with that. Have you used this as part of a team, wondering what conflicts as multiple team member apply to the same changes to the same app? Yes, so I do use this. I use it in InfDAO. And what we use is, so it actually links into OAuth in organization, and we have different organization teams. So let me show you. No, not templates. It's in projects and Indexer. So with Indexer, so you can see this is actually a GitHub role, so it links into GitHub directly, and it grabs these roles in the organization, so just the team members. And so if you only had Argo admin, this you would get to see everything. But let's say if you had the indexer role and you had the indexer admins. So if you're just an indexer admin and you don't mess around with the infrastructure, you will only see your whole dashboard will get a lot smaller. You're going to only have stuff that's part of the indexer project. So you can really relegate people to kind of their own workloads. And you can also easily, like I was showing, you can go to different repos where you're launching stuff. So you can kind of keep people in their little silos with their apps if they're kind of the only one working on it. But you can silo people off in multiple ways through the UI, what they can and can't do in the cluster. But you can really drill down how you want people to work and what they can and can't do. Does that answer the question? Or if they apply changes to the same app. Yeah. Yeah, you can also launch different revisions of that Git app with those applications. So if you wanted to have multiple, maybe you have, a different branch where you have a development branch and then you have your main branch, you can also launch off of the dev branch. And then that way that person will have their own app. So you can make like a dev role and they can have that role and they'll be operating off of those dev branches where they're kind of pushing stuff really rapidly. And then when they push it to the main branch, the other app that maybe has more resources, what have you, will launch that. But you can also relegate people to dev, prod, and staging clusters. There's a million ways you can do it. Yeah, so you can launch off of, if you create a branch, you can work off of that, and you can silo people to that branch if you really want to. I know this is kind of a deep topic with a short amount of time frame.
You're doing great. This is amazing.
I'm trying to ramble off as much as I can, so.
This is great. Yeah, no, I see people typing, so I'm assuming questions or thoughts are coming through. But yeah, keep going. This is great. Yeah, getting some positive feedback from Vincent is saying, can't wait to give it a try. And then we have a question from Jim.
It does.
Like to...
Yes, it integrates with lots of things. It integrates with private repos. It integrates with GitLab. And there's actually some cool things GitLab can do that GitHub can't. It has some pretty deep integration with GitLab. But kind of anywhere you have a file and you can get to it, it can pull it. But it does have some cool integrations with GitLab. Off the top of my head, I can't ramble them off, but I know it does have some cool stuff with that.
I think she might put something to change her.
Yes, the self-hoster. But yes, that will work just fine. Yes. Let me see if there's anything else. Because I did want to chat about another topic as well. That's just external secrets. So I guess the core products, if you want to write this down, for if you're taking a Kubernetes journey and there's 700 different million tools, I'm using Argo CD for GitOps. I'm using LinStore for my storage. I'm using Cert Manager for SSL. And I'm using Postgres operator for my Postgres databases. What else? I'm using Victoria metrics for my metrics and Grafana. And then I'm using external secrets, external secret operator. So that's something I didn't show, but it's something that lets you grab secrets from any backend you really want. So there is an Argo one as well, but I haven't fully used it or tested it yet. But it kind of lets you pick your flavor of backend. Central logging setup. What do you mean by that? All logs can be seen by Grafana to create alerts. Yeah, so you can use Loki. You can use what's it called? Or no, you can't use Loki with Victoria, but you can use QuickWit and some other stuff to ship logs other places. So if you want to ship it to buckets or whatever you want to do, or you can just save them centrally. Whatever you feel like doing, kind of with that. I am still debating. I will say I'm still on the fence with Victoria Metrics and Prometheus. And I would say the only difference being that Prometheus has so much more, I guess, support community-wide. Like if you want cool things, it's usually always based off of assumptions that you're using Prometheus and Grafana stack rather than Victoria Metrics. But from what I've seen, the compute required is much lower, especially when you scale with Victoria metrics. But yeah, that is the trade-off you kind of take, is the adoption for the Prometheus Loki Grafana stack is much higher. Yes, yes. If you wanted to run an HA, you need the whole Thanos thing. So yeah, that can get a little tricky. Yeah, I said what I'm doing for storage, networking. Yeah, and then that's kind of really the only tools you need. Anything else is fluff, I guess. Anything else? Yeah, hopefully I can get you guys a skeleton out by the end of the quarter where you can kind of just plug in. I mean, the only really things you'll have to do is put in your indexer variables, so like your indexer address, and put in your operator mnemonic and declare your disks, and then you're good. My goal is to get it as close as I can to like something like the steak squid stack for Docker, where it's something people can get a handle on, and they may not know 100% of what they're doing, but it's working, and then they can go from there. That's kind of my goal. And hopefully, making good decisions for people, because I know you can spend years just deciding what tool to use and going through 7 different tools for storage or whatever you're using. All right, it seems like all that stuff is, yes, way too many options. We know that very well at Pinex. Yes, yes. So Abel, if you're cool, I'd definitely like to jump on another topic, more indexing related.
Yeah, go ahead. Free.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I wanted to, I guess, continue the conversation about the upgrade indexer last week, and kind of like where we're at with onboarding new chains and how, some of these chains, the requirements is quite heavy. Something like Solana, where heavily used, big community, but 50 terabytes is kind of rough. But I've been having this thought, and I wanted to see what you guys think. I've talked to some people about it already, but um, and I don't know necessarily what the lift is or anything like that. But getting to a point where having the option in subgraphs or just on the network in general to be able to support just pruned nodes versus archive nodes. Um, because if that were something where I believe, I don't have exact metrics, but the amount of subgraphs that are actually using archival data is quite low versus the other. And having GraphNode or just the network in general be able to support something like pruned nodes, where people could grab onto Solana, and maybe, I don't know what it would be, but maybe instead of 50 terabytes, it's a terabyte. Yeah, 64 terabytes. It was 50 terabytes last year. So you can see the kind of space we're talking about, which really hampers new indexers, obviously. Um, but yes, prune subgraphs, and I think that's something you should be able to quickly, um, I guess, know, including on the Graph Explorer and what you're doing, kind of the requirements. Hey, this is an archive, and maybe, uh, and also maybe increasing those prices for archival calls, and we'd be able to decrease prices for queries, and drop it something to more like the competitor pricing per query, when we're only providing pruned nodes. So I think that would take a lot of strain off of the upgrade indexer. It would also enable smaller indexers to index a lot more, because if I had the storage for a Solana node, I could probably run 50 chains um, instead of just one Solana archival node. So that was just a thought. I wanted to blurt it out and just see what you guys think.
I think the path to cheaper queries and more indexers is really only unlocked by either the evolution of technology, so cheaper storage, cheaper compute, etc. Indexers are painfully aware of how much it costs to run indexers, or to buy, what's now becoming the norm is 30 terabyte NVMEs, right? That's really the reality of where we are now if we want to continue deploying archive nodes to everything that we want to support. So in order to both expand the indexer base and make it more economical to do so, we need to look at options that reduce the costs. And the storage one's the obvious one. Archive nodes are massive. Full nodes are also massive, but not as massive. I think Chris makes a really good point there about language, right? So we need to, I was throwing around the terms like chain head indexing and archive indexing. Conversations with Vince and Chris, we've talked about pruned versus non-pruned. So I think language is really important here, and we'd like sort of understand what we're saying when we say these things and sort of come to consensus on what we mean. I also would like to say that I think I would like to signal pretty strongly that I'm in total support of what the plan is, Edgenode's plan with the upgrade indexer, and looking to have indexers participate more in indexing the long tail. But I think the harsh reality we're up against is that the long tail is extremely long. And it's a massive lift for existing indexers to take on the responsibilities that currently mostly lie with the upgrade indexer. And this idea of having a service that offers archive-based indexing and a service that gives a sort of chain head indexing approach is something that we need to be able to offer in the same way that, roughly the same way that the SaaS providers do. So, it's literally a tick box. Whether you want archive support or not when you're buying an RPC from Alchemy, QuickNode, whoever. So I think that as part of this, the current sort of timeline around the upgrade indexer and the signal increases, we don't want to end up in a situation where only the biggest infrastructure providers can take on the heavy burden of running all of these chains. That kind of defeats the purpose of why we're all here and why we all work with a work token, right? So I think that this is like a critical blocker for really the very long tail that we need to take on responsibility for as indexers. So that's my thoughts on it, Vince.
Yes, I was also kind of envisioning the same kind of thing with providing that front user experience and clear distinction for indexers. So if I decide I don't do archive anymore, it's clearly defined what I can and can't support. And also for the end customer of ticking that box, you're the other side of the coin or the token, where you're selecting what kind of service you want, and if you do need those calls, you're going to pay a heavier price for a heavier burden on the operators. So I think that solution kind of lends to both parties, where heavy infrastructure providers will probably always do archives, but it does take I think it would take a massive load off of a lot of. I mean, just the Arbitrum archive is what 20 something plus terabytes now, and that's our core network. How does the discussion fit with the direction of dips that was previously announced? Well, I mean, with dips, you're really selecting indexers. So I think if that were something put into the protocol, that it would be able to, you would be able to flag, or at least in my eyes, how it would work would be you'd be able to flag, hey, I support this, and this chain at a, chain head indexing level, and I support
Hello?
this, and this chain at an archival level. And then that way, that part of dips can know that there's clear distinction in what you're providing to the network, and it can select you for those jobs. Um, but yeah, I'll let Chris talk about that.
Afternoon, please.
Or Christ.
Yeah, I do have a few thoughts to share. I like really appreciate you raising this, Vince, because yeah, obviously, my NVMe. So yeah, really important
Okay, I'll
discussion.
take that. So 17th of March.
I do think it's worth just stepping through things in a little bit more detail, because it's important to disambiguate between like data source pruning and data set pruning. And then I also think a lot of what you're asking for, to some extent, is already supported and it like is enabled in the market. So let's, if we can kind of step through it briefly. So first of all, when it comes to pruning, the kind of fundamental pruning is like pruning of blockchain nodes, right? So that's really, I think when we talk about like the majority of this NVMe storage burden, we're really talking about the burden associated with archive blockchain nodes. And separately to archive blockchain nodes, we have the idea of archive state in subgraphs, right? And pruning in subgraphs, but the two are completely unrelated. And both kind of factor into this discussion. Now, I think we have a lot more power over the second one, right? Over the burden of subgraph data and like archival subgraph data on indexers, because that's, the technology stack in the market that we control. On the other hand, what determines whether an indexer needs archival data or not is not whether the subgraph is pruned or not. That really doesn't matter at all. It's what data does the subgraph require to index? And I can speak for the most part about Ethereum because that's what I understand the best. But, in that context, any subgraph that is indexing and doing an ETH call, for example, will need archival state to be able to resolve, the correct result of that ETH call. So really, it's about the subgraph developer, right, and their choices impacting the requirement of whether or not there is an archival node, right? So there's really nothing that we can do, right? If the subgraph or the data set requires archival data to index, then it requires that data. And then, of course, there's subgraph pruning. I totally agree that like the whole network should be shifting to like a pruned first model. I do think that's roughly where things already are. Like if you look at the latest version of the subgraph specifications, I think they turn on subgraph pruning hints by default. So any new subgraphs should come with hints from the subgraph developer that automatically prunes the data. And, generally like when we talk about pruned subgraph data, we're really just pruning, the historical states, and therefore there's the loss of the ability for a consumer to do time travel queries over that subgraph data. But yes, that really has no relation to the need for archival data in the underlying data source in order to index it in the first place. Does that make sense?
It is also worth noting that time travel queries makes up for like around 1 to 2% of the queries on the network, or around 1.3, 1.5% of the data sets that I've looked at. And that is also something that the subgraph developers themselves can get around by having other patterns in their subgraph. And it's also not something that it does directly impact that one subgraph in isolation, but it doesn't impact the ability to sync other subgraphs on the same network. So for an indexer that syncs one subgraph that is pruned and one subgraph that is not pruned, the one that is not that is pruned will still be spending this storage space, while if we are looking at ETH calls, it's a one or zero, right? Like either you as an indexer have an archive node and need an archive node, and as long as there's one subgraph that needs that archive node that you want to sync, you need that archive node. So that's more complicated because it impacts all. It impacts the entire storage of that chain, and it's also harder for subgraph developers to get around using ETH calls, because the better patterns you use there would also impact how you would write your smart contracts, and not all subgraph developers are also the ones that are developing smart contracts. So yeah, it's two very, very different discussions, and but I do agree it's time to go back and look at the trade-offs that we made 4 years ago when we started the graph, and see if there's any other trade-offs that we may want to do, and if we choose to keep ETH calls and time travel queries, we should be very aware of the trade-offs and how it impacts the indexing community.
Yeah, but huge +1 to that, Slim. That particularly that like the utility of archive data extending to all subgraphs on that chain is a really good point. So yeah, with all of that acknowledged about like the difference between archive sources versus archive subgraphs, and generally I think, we should be moving to pruned data because, yeah, nobody uses time travel queries. With that caveat on grafting noted, I think that then the next big thing is about, can the market, right, the graph network, effectively price the premium associated with time travel queries and, kind of like full archival subgraphs. And I think a lot of the problems there are actually already solved, in the sense that the indexer status endpoint, which the gateway queries, already exposes metadata to the gateway that it, lets the gateway know how much of the subgraph's history is available for query. So on the routing side, the problem's already solved. I would say what's not solved is more like the pricing mechanism in the market, because Agora is not capable of pricing a time travel query. And even though subgraph manifests do allow a subgraph developer to specify, a set of pruning hints, right, which are automatically applied, the indexer doesn't need to follow those hints, right? So, and unfortunately, the side effect of that is it kind of it means that the behavior, like the pruning behavior of the data set, is not codified into the subgraph deployment, and so it's not deterministic, right? So you can have the same deployment hash, and then two indexers that treat it, totally differently with respect to pruning. And that's okay for the gateway; it understands which is which. But in terms of like a market mechanism for pricing both the indexing of that subgraph and also the queries for that subgraph, I think that's kind of a missing piece. And maybe one simple solution is just to actually remove the ability for indexers to adjust the pruning behavior outside of what is in the indexer hints, right? And so essentially, the subgraph developer decides whether it's a pruned data set or not. And then, the pruned version and the unpruned version have different subgraph hashes, can be priced differently. So that's maybe one solution. But at least some of the problems already solved with respect to routing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. And that's kind of why I guess I brought it up, was more so, well, to get us talking about it, but also I definitely think this solution may be more on the side of where we guide the developers and the users of the platform and giving them clear distinction on what is and what is not. Because right now it's kind of like, you kind of do whatever you want. But having a more guided experience to, what kind of subgraph are you going to publish on the network, and then different hashes definitely. But yeah, guiding the protocol and the network into those, I guess, isolated environments to where I can decide what type of thing I'm going to require, and then build off of that and have like clearly defined isolation to like what I'm paying for. Kind of like when Jim was talking about, where if I'm on Alchemy, there's a click box for an end user, and I want an RPC node, and I go on Quick Node and I say I want an Ethereum node. Then there's a little box and it says add $400 a month archive, and it's very simple for them to understand and guide them into how they should be using the platform. Because I think we did get into this long tail situation because it was kind of like the Wild West. In the development space, and kind of people cloning everything and doing stuff and keeping stuff around forever, and so yeah, I definitely think the messaging and how we guide the network is a big key piece of this coming to happen at all. Yes, there is also that.
Amazing. Thank you for flagging that, and I will most certainly get on to trying to set up a follow-up conversation on this. It is a big conversation that needs to be revisited, so happy to do that. Okay, we are 5 minutes over, but at the same time, I do want to leave a little bit of space in case there are any burning questions, thoughts that people want to share. As you guys are fast. You guys are fast with the memes. I like it. So I do want to leave some space if there are any final thoughts from anyone. And then I'll hand it to Vince for his final words, and then we can wrap. So, any final thoughts from anyone? Any final questions on the topic? I want to make sure people feel like they've been heard and questions have been answered. So just make some space. John K is typing. Anyone in Denver this week? Okay, I guess that's out for everyone. I'm not, unfortunately. I would love to be. So I feel FOMO. But yeah. If anyone is, message John. All right, Vince, final words before we wrap today's conversation?
Yeah, just a big thank you to everyone that stuck it out. I know it was a lot in a little time. So if you have any burning questions about it or just want to know more about any of it, feel free to DM me or whatever, and just let me know.
There you go. Thank you, sir, for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. Of course, we can get you back on to talk more about this if you're down for that. So yeah, thanks everyone again for being here. We really do appreciate you for sticking around even past the hour mark. We look forward to seeing you all again same time next week for another edition of Index and Office Hours. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and bye-bye.